Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending and coming to listen to us talk about AMA and our work. So I'll tell you a little bit about AMA first of all. We're a boutique design company. We're headquartered in Dubai and been started about 5 years ago. And it's a partnership with myself and Mr. Naji Mahmood, who's from Jordan originally, and went through AUS here in Dubai. And we like to be very design focused. We've both worked for international practice before, and we met working together in an international practice in Dubai, and we worked in some competitions and projects together, found we worked well together, and now we're working as a company together. And what's exciting for us is that we're about to have some of our first projects from a few years ago. They're being built and nearly finished. This is just some of the office members. We have a multinational team, and we have a supporting office in Hong Kong, and we're hoping to get an office in Europe quite soon too. So we're quite a young design studio focusing on contemporary design, and we've done a lot of residential work with Emar the last few years and other big clients in the UAE. And as I mentioned, so some of our first projects are now being built and just about finished, as in end of this year. This is a villa on the Palm for an individual private client who really wanted something unique to him and innovative and something distinctive. So we worked a curved linear geometry to make the most of the views while giving good shading from the sun with this quite special site on one of the palm fronds in Dubai. So that's pretty much finished that project. And this is another sort of major project from us in the last few years, which is also finishing in November. It's a marina hub for the new Dubai Marina Harbour, where the first port of call for boats coming in and hiring boats. So this is just opening as a harbour now. There's the first boats are appearing. There'll be a new cruise terminal, and we've been redesigned from concept to completion this project, acting as the kind of station for the harbour master, and also a fine dining restaurant on the upper deck, and cafe and some other boat facilities. And another one of our early projects for Emar is this residential towers in the Dubai Hills Estate, looking over the golf course with nice big balconies, kind of capturing these views. So these are all on site. It's very great and exciting for us. Now, I'm going to pass over to my colleague Ahmed now. We're going to talk about residential design today and what's going on in kind of pandemic situation, unprecedented, and how that's going to change long-term approach to cities and residential design. And there's some other big pictures affecting residential design, and then we'll show some projects. So I think, you going to share screen now, Ahmed?
Yes. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is Ahmed Sheikhon, and I'm just about to share my screen here.
Oh, I can stop sharing.
Okay. Can you see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
So as my colleague Andy mentioned, we're going to be talking about the new ways of living, and of course during these unprecedented times, I think it's important that we dedicate a whole section just for pandemic adaptation strategies, because this pandemic is forcing everybody to live in a different way. I mean, whether we like it or not, this is our reality at the moment. And I mean, in the majority of the places around the world, we are kind of past using lockdown measures to contain the spread of COVID-19, and governments worldwide in the majority of the countries have transferred the responsibility of public protection from themselves to the general public. So, I mean, life has to go on eventually, and for that to happen, economic activities have to cautiously continue with adaptive strategies, as well as we're talking about ways of living as well. So, adaptive strategies when it comes to our activities, and measures to put in place to address contagion mitigation for the public safety. So, I mean, as architects, our contribution to deal with the pandemic are going to be more design related, and we basically have to adapt the existing designs that we have using the methods we can kind of see here on the screen, such as, for example, the use of a touchless lift panel to mitigate touching, and as well as sanitization pods, or for example, some lights to limit the number of people at a space at a time to limit the contagion, as well as, for example, placing sanitization machines and vending machines to provide people with the proper protection in terms of equipment and for example, the sanitizers, as well as, for example, thinking about adapting using pods or sort of these spaces that are pop-up spaces in more public settings when it comes to, for example, work environments, and the use of other things, for example, such as antiviral fabrics. Now, sorry. And then if we're talking about the more kind of larger scale of things that we can do to adapt to this current pandemic is, for example, in waiting areas in restaurants and in, like, for example, bus stops, we could use things such as outdoor seating that encourages social distancing by providing, for example, a screen or a buffer between people that's green and something pleasant to look at, a more aesthetic. And for example, it has a glass or a plexiglass partition. And then in public spaces, we can start to as well. We're already starting to see these things, just like placement of these markers on the ground, perhaps to kind of guide people as to how much distance they should leave with each other, as well as maybe businesses can also contribute to this by allowing people to come in and for example, sanitize for free. These are other examples that are currently being used as well to mitigate the spread of COVID by using, for example, partitions when it comes to working spaces and protective seating. And it doesn't, I mean, protective strategies don't have to be things that aren't aesthetically pleasing or something that's designed to look nice and have a pleasant experience for the end user. So you can see here things that are, things that are, in my opinion, can look nice and be aesthetically pleasing and comfortable, as well as provide the protection necessary to mitigate the COVID-19 transmission. Now, this is an example that actually implements the adaptive measures from the very beginning, as opposed to just superficially as the examples we've seen previously. This example deals more with the designs from the very beginning. How do you actually design, in this case, an apartment that is a pandemic adapted apartment? So, for example, things that can be done that's not commonly done is we can have a sanitization station near the entrance where people are forced to remove their shoes, for example, and there's like a hand wash / sanitization area. And on the right side, people can remove their PPE equipment and place all their jackets. And then you have the delivery door, so you don't have to come into contact with anybody who's delivering anything to you, be it food or anything else. So they can open the door from the outside, place the food or the items that you've ordered, and then you can basically take it safely from the inside after you've sanitized them. And something else that could be done is perhaps an introduction of a shower in the guest bathroom, so that guests who have been commuting for a while can actually go in there and just completely sanitize as much as possible. And then you've got the way you think about spaces now, like in terms of planning, you can have open plans, but for example, have these partitions that temporarily come in when someone is just basically engaged in desanitization, as well as we can think of having these multifunctional room / gym for working out, and then you'll have the buffer spaces between your main spaces. And then you would think of using, for example, like flexible partitions where the dining space is, because it becomes a flexible space as opposed to just a dedicated space for dining and eating. It's a place where people can study and form, for example, do video conferences just like the one we're doing as well. So if there's some noise happening in the living space, we can easily just partition it off and close it off. And then we can also think about use of more greenery, even if it's like a small apartment. I mean, there's no problem with implementing strategies such as having a little garden and hydroponic vertical garden, for example. And that for sure plays in and increases the well-being of people who are locked in or quarantining. And if we talk about more of the public realm, and in this case study is about a restaurant and how they're able to mitigate contagion using strategies such as, for example, limiting the movement of certain people or users. I mean, depending on their clearance and what they're doing. So people who are in the back of house, like would not mix with people who are dining, so that mitigate contagion this way. So you have this, a diagram which shows the clearance of the movement of people here, for example. And then, of course, you will have to rethink the way you design your public spaces and restaurants, and you would maybe kind of use less or eliminate altogether counter seating, and then spread out more and increase the number of booths. And this doesn't have to decrease the number of users a lot. In this case here, I don't know if it's really visible. So here, the occupants have not decreased by a lot. just by eliminating like the elements that people are really close together with, and then just like increasing the number of elements that promote sort of isolation while still being in contact with people. So as you can see, like instead of 67 seatings, it just reduced to 52, which is not that much less, but it ensures everyone's safety for sure and provides everyone with an experience that they're after. Yes. So I mean, these are other strategies that we can use to mitigate the contagion as well when we talk about architecture specifically. So we can make spaces breathe better, you know, improve the sequence of flow throughout the space, use pressure on traffic on high traffic places by, for example, as a previous example I mentioned, limiting the number of people who can use certain spaces or traverse through these spaces, and encourage people to get outdoor more. Of course, in our climate, in our region, this is done more in the pleasant months. And of course, you can increase the cleaning protocols, expand the threshold of the units, and embed technologies that allow, for example, such as, for example, the cameras which test for the for people who have high fever. And then on the right, we can see here like certain implementation methods for more public spaces. I mean, this is more for the F&B sector. So I mean, that's it for the pandemic adaptation strategies. Back to you, Andy.
Hi, everybody. Yeah. Okay, should be seeing my screen again with a slide. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's kind of about what's been happening immediately with the pandemic affecting how people live and have to act. But what we find quite interesting as architects working in the region and dealing with clients and government bodies and even with RIBA and things is how is this going to change people's approach to living and approach to city design? Because in the Middle East, you know, the governments and clients, they kind of design whole mini cities or parts of cities. And I think it's known that there's changes happening to all of society and hence all of construction. So on a kind of economic as well as architectural level, it all impacts each other. So I think having a lockdown, being forced to stay within your a building for such a long time, and it's changed people's mentality in several ways, which I've put here to highlight. One is how important sense of community is, and although it can be mentioned a lot by developers, is like, what does it really mean to have a community that once you miss it, you know, what was it that created it and caused it? The space you have for living, the quality of space is very important, and it can affect your quality of life. So people are rethinking what it means to have a good home, a good space to live in. I think people started appreciating that they can connect more to nature for their own well-being. And a recent trend in global architecture is seeing buildings that have a lot more greenery integrated into facade and ground plane and all over. It's a bit harder in this climate, but it's even here people start to look at it. The idea of wellness and that how your whole well-being is important and related to your environment, and your architecture, buildings, developments create your environment that you live in. People finding how clean the air was without all the cars and planes running. So electrification of transport mobility is another big theme emerging. And now the work from home, I think, is generally regarded from people I speak to. Flexible working, at least part-time working from home, is going to be the common way moving forward. So if you're spending more time at home working, that means the configuration of your house will be different, and also where and how you live changes. And so what people think is going to happen is that there's a big rush to cities in the last 10 years, and all this talk of, you know, cities getting too dense, how they handle it, how the infrastructure handle it. There's a bit of a reverse action happening now. A lot of people are leaving New York and some of these big, dirty, hard to live in cities, even though they had a lot of energy. And some of the smaller cities that still have a good quality of life, but not the commuting issues and things, are becoming more and more popular. And this applies now globally, not just within regions. So if you can work anywhere for your internet, where do you choose to live, to work? What is it that you want? You want to have a good space. You want to have, but also have a sense of community and activities that you can do. So the whole city and buildings have to kind of cater for this need to have a good quality of life, because you're competing now with, cities are competing with each other to offer a place for workers to live, raise their families, and while working remotely. So this is going to, I think, change the approach to living design, because this kind of livability becomes much more important than location. Okay, the other major factor which had been affecting housing before pandemic, cost of living rising across the world, making it harder for families to live. construction hasn't really changed much in the last 50, 60 years, still just concrete and cladding. But there's new construction methods, whether it's prefab, MMC, 3D printing, which could completely disrupt the way construction is done. And some of the changes we've seen in other industries, such as media, could happen in construction and just change the whole dynamic. I mean, what if your housing got as improved as much as TVs have in the last 20 years? And there is a housing crisis in some form, I think, in every country. Some countries there's just not enough housing and too expensive. In some places just misallocation, or just the old stock has to be replaced with climate adapted ones, or ones that are not emitting so much energy and carbon. And climate change is also, at the start of this year, getting more and more important, and there's a big picture to address. And as we know, housing takes up so much energy to build and then use, that this has to be addressed as well in design. So I'm going to just keep an eye on the time. Okay, I'm going to go through some of our projects which address these big issues. And one of them is actually the idea of co-living, which is a new typology which didn't really exist 5-10 years ago. And we designed for Emaar a co-living project in Dubai, which is very much about livability. I'm going to speed up a bit because we've got 7-8 minutes maybe. So I'll go quicker through the images and give high-level summary. So co-living project, there's a lot more communal facilities in a typical tower. This whole podium is connected to a garden. There's a big gym, spa. There's a common kitchen dining area. You can share spaces such as laundry and a working area, cinema, yoga room. But in exchange for that, you have a slightly smaller, simpler unit, which makes it much cheaper to afford. And you're encouraged to congregate in the communal areas. Obviously, once COVID has gone away and meeting is much more easier. So you have a generally cheaper building, making it more accessible and affordable, but with very generous shared communal facilities to kind of create more like a community hub around your building. And so this was in Dubai Hills, and it still is, there's commercial metrics driving these things as normal. So you have to be quite careful that a lot of these projects, the trick is have a very efficient plan that really works to make the financial side work, but be creative with the facade and the massing to make it elegant and interesting and not look like a kind of bad housing block that's associated from the decades before. So this is here, this co-living project Faye, and you see the generous podium with lots of functions connecting to the park. There's the pool. Again, generous balconies to give that kind of outdoor fresh air living. This is actually the arrival lobby. So unlike a typical building, it's not just a kind of sofa and lift and security guard. There's a proper kind of living area where people can work, and there's a cafe as well. So that's the whole plan of the ground floor lobby. So a lot more generous than normal. This is the podium communal area. Again, a lot more than normal in that there's a yoga room, communal dining, kitchen. There's just the plans showing that for efficiency, it's all mirrored and modular in the units. There's only really 5 types across the whole building so that you can just design them carefully well and then repeat. And it speeds up. We super fast tracked this project. We did a design to tender with full approvals in only about 4 or 5 months in Dubai, which is very, very quick because with the client, we made lots of fast track processes. You still get a nice unit. These are some plan, a typical unit that went in the sales brochure. And this is started on site as well. Nearby, we did a master plan with Emaar and then some of these projects. And again, here we're looking with the massing, keep it simple for the same principles of making their units affordable and whilst getting the best space and quality and getting the most out of the views in nature by creating these parks, removing the car parking as a big feature of the podium and really opening up the views to the golf course and the park in front. So this project here is kind of mid-rise, it's kind of low budget, but it's trying to get the best quality out of something just simple and effective and making the most of this park then integrates with the building. And this is another one from the same plot. So I think the difference from earlier versions of kind of commercial development here is trying really to get a lot more community out of nature and connecting to natural features whilst making something affordable because of a very competitive market in Dubai at the time these were launched. To try and make it very affordable, but getting the best value and quality out of it. This is another co-living project, but even tighter sizes, because the last one was actually quite generous in size. And this is a view from the street. So 2 simple blocks with like good efficient planning, getting the best of the views, connecting to the park with this one had some townhouses on the front. So these are the plans, and you'll see that they're they're kind of quite tight, 43, 44 square meters, one bed, but still functional. You've got everything you need. It's just kind of in a nice, tight box and not too much glazing, keep the cost down. Two bed as well, kind of more flexible, the wall for the first bedroom. But it's kind of, it's quite for Middle East standards, quite a tight plan for new development, but it's still enough to function and makes it more affordable, and it's a very popular product of Emar. Again, this is the ground floor, so it's more like a kind of roof hotel, very interactive, active communal ground area with all kinds of functions, games room, cafe, working area, spilling out onto the park. Okay, and that's a typical plan. Again, just a lot of repetition to make it very efficient. Looking forward, in Singapore, they'd probably do this with prefab mass construction and assemble it and have it built in under a year. But this is designed with a concrete structure, which just kind of for efficiency and design process, using a lot of repetition and then varying facade. This is inside this collective project. So this is a co-living Dubai style. But yeah, make it light, bright, and still connected to nature, feels very comfortable, but affordable. And so, then you have more money to spend on the rest of your life. Again, very green, generous communal facilities and simple facade. This is the lobby area. Again, very active, kind of communal. You can work here, you can sit and read, meet people, and there'd be an app to kind of connect people within the building as a whole community of activities. And this is a breakout from the edge. This is a villa in Portugal, built a few years ago. Again, it's about connecting to nature for the kind of wellness and quality of life, because it's a very natural site on a mountain. So it's maximizing the amount of natural light through glazing and facing the view of the sea, and growing the garden on the mountain around it and inhabiting it. So it has a courtyard to bring light in both sides, a lot of natural finishes, like granite floor, timber ceiling, to kind of bring a sense of nature and lightness around you to make it a very just comfortable, peaceful place to be. And this is now kind of integrating, growing into the mountain. And again, with light, kind of good supply of light all around. So this goes back to kind of making your livability through getting access to natural elements. This is another project we did earlier this year. It was bigger scale, master plan. And what's driving this is that you can see, I don't know if you'll see my pointer, there's a central spine down here, which is all this central block is for no cars, electric vehicles only, to keep the air clean and encourage sustainability. So you would connect from all these residential blocks to offices and the other communal hubs only through electric buses running up and down, cycling, scooters, that kind of thing. And our buildings, we use connectivity at ground level to encourage walking as well. So you see here again, this is spine. And the connecting like these nodes hubs. But so the whole thing is connected more with natural active elements, encouraging community and connection, and also non-petrol transport. Again, so you get this kind of heart in the middle with activities, a green spine, and allowing clean transport across. And within this, there's like living, hospitals, school, everything, so that you wouldn't have to really leave this community. So it's like operating like a cell. Even the parking, the parking is at grade but covered with solar panels to stop the car and the parking interrupting the street in the urban scale. And then you have your buildings connected by this green spine. And these are the link buildings we made to encourage walking so that you don't have to be popping in and out. You can have a sort of AC route through most of the development. Okay. So this is the villa on the Palm, kind of striking and innovative in its form. And this is some more pictures of it on site. Okay. Yeah. This is the interiors following the same language.
So I will just ask the audience if they can send their questions while you're browsing these. Yeah, so if anyone have questions, please send it over.
Okay. This is, I mean, we're kind of finished. I'll flick through the last few projects. So I'm more about, and the last few, they're different, but we're interested in how you can have like new technologies merged with mass production to try and get the cost down, but have something modern and striking. So this is probably the most creative version, but this was for Sharjah, kind of making townhouses where the facade out of composites would be made off-site and just kind of mass produced and assembled to make something different and striking. This is a different way of living on the water with a circular economy to keep things within it. So I'll just skip over this. And then we've actually done a lot of residential work with Umar and other clients here, looking at kind of quite simple standard plans that work for resi, but by controlling the facade again, making a variety of materials, you can kind of bring in some nice touches to make something that's affordable but high quality. And we've done this with kind of villa blocks. This is for Egypt, actually. And again, just playing with typology to this mid-rise. So there's a trick of variety through playing with the facade module, but the kind of underlying planning and massing module is very repetitive, so that you can kind of quickly, cheaply, and very quickly design, assemble, and build, deliver this type of projects in countries where housing is needed. Because I think actually everybody, if they're offered a better house, would take it. So I think in some ways everybody needs, every country needs housing. Some more than others though. Some are on a big housing drive and trying to make housing which is kind of high quality for quality of life, and also now I have to think sustainable, low energy, good access to nature, because it does affect everybody's well-being. I think I'll stop there. I could have shown a bit more of co-living from around the world, but people can research that themselves if they're interested, because in other countries co-living is a bit different. It can be a refurb, much smaller scale. In the Middle East with this space, we've approached it as a kind of blank canvas to just make a sort of efficient, tight, small units, but very high quality of life.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
We will see if anyone have questions. They can send it over now and we can proceed. Again, thank you for the presentation. We said quite different typicals and prototypes of projects and methodologies.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we covered quite a lot there, but it's a big and interesting topic, and something that's obviously, I find it fascinating how much it's changing, and this year has accelerated a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see a lot more in the next 10 years. And it's interesting that for me, Saudi being very ambitious in how they approach these kind of things. They're really keen, from what I see, to try new technologies, try new things to address the problems that need to be addressed.
True.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you again, Andrew and Ahmed. It was a pleasure seeing you with us. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.